So a black they-them artist, a white she-her Canadian ooh-ooh cat girl, and a Mexican they-them fan all walk into a bar, and a priest and a rabbi walk out. Okay, let me give a bit more of a serious explanation. So a YouTuber named Omnia made a video on a topic of racism in the art community. Neko Koda commentated on it. And then this person named Pepper-Tei, who I had never heard of until now, commentated on it. And I had some issues, so I decided to commentate on that. I should note, Pepper-Tei misgenders Omnia throughout the entire video. I'm not offended by this, and given the fact that Pepper-Tei corrected this in the description, it leads me to believe this was just an accident. I'm just giving you all a fair warning. I'll also be skipping the intro because, well, it just covers what I just explained to you all, except slower and more monotone. Yeah, Pepper-Tei seems to have gone to the tie-dye school of emoting. So they sound incredibly bored throughout the entire video. Is this how you commentate?
With that being said, I think it's important that if you are part of the 80% of artists who are white, to
Question to Pepper-Tei, what's up with the VHS filter over this video? It's incredibly distracting.
have a seat and get comfortable because it's your turn to listen and allow black artists to speak this time. It is not the job of white folks to decide what is or is not racist, and it is not their place to decide whether or not issues in the community pertaining to black artists are harmful. Black artists can speak on their own behalf. Please hold your comments till the end.
One comment. Given how the first 4 minutes are you saying the art community is predominantly white, wouldn't you want white people in these spaces to speak up more about racism and things they see as racist? I mean, obviously, your experience as a black person is going to give you more insight and a different experience that white people just won't have, but more people calling out racism is a good thing. I can't tell you how difficult it is to speak up as a trans person when I'm in a group of cis people and they're talking about how respecting pronouns is stupid. The less people that speak out about these issues, the harder it is for these marginalized groups to speak out.
But that's not Omnia's issue here. She's not saying that she doesn't want any white person in any racial spaces, but rather have white people not be the opposition to say what is and isn't racist, and let people of color be the ones to argue.
Not be the opposition? What? So they don't want white people to oppose saying what is and isn't racist? I mean, probably, but I don't really think that was the point Omnia was going for. How did... you don't make any sense. Also, what exactly is a racial space? When I hear that, the only thing I can think of is spaces that are, well, racially segregated. Oh, and that's also not what Omnia said, although, to be fair, Neko got this kind of wrong as well. Omnia wasn't saying that they didn't want white people to speak up about racism, nor that they didn't want white people to be the opposition and have minorities be the ones who argue or whatever, but that it should be up to marginalized groups to decide what is and is not racist and not white people. This, by the way, is something Neko acknowledges is a possibility and responds to in a part of the video that you cut out.
Perhaps you're trying to argue that white people shouldn't be the arbiters of what is and isn't racist, not that they shouldn't speak out about this at all, but what if a white person sees something racist and nobody else is pointing it out? Should they keep quiet? Should they wait for a black person to say something first? Something that could be very difficult for them, given the majority of the group you're talking about is white?
To explain what I mean while trying to tie this back to Neko's comparison, Omnia would have no issue with cisgender people, such as myself, calling not respecting pronouns transphobic, because the vast majority of transgender people would agree with that sentiment. However, if a bunch of cisgender people went around declaring, I don't know, the color green to be transphobic without any input from transgender people, that would be an issue. Not only because no transgender person would back that claim up, and because false claims like that lead to people taking claims of transphobia less seriously, but also because they didn't get any input from the group they're claiming to defend. Basically, it's someone determining what is and isn't bigoted on their behalf, and well, if cisgender people can decide something that isn't transphobic is, they sure as hell can also decide that something that is transphobic just isn't. In the same regard, if white people can decide that something which isn't racist actually is racist, they could easily decide that something that clearly is racist actually isn't. With that said, I do think Omnia's point can be easily misinterpreted, but that doesn't change the fact that neither of you got it. Although, I'm not even entirely sure Pepper didn't get it as much as they just worded it terribly, which, spoilers, is going to be a big issue with the video.
If she wanted white people to not say anything ever, yeah, that would be a problem because that's gatekeeping and doesn't help white people get educated on such a broad topic as racism. But that's not what she said, end of story.
Neko never said that Omnia didn't want white people to learn anything about racism. Where did you get that idea exactly? She was saying that Omnia was arguing that white people shouldn't talk about racism more generally. Again, this isn't even Omnia's point, and you still got this wrong.
Obviously, with a more homogeneous population and less representation, diversity, and inclusion,
And the VHS filter is gone. Okay.
world, there will be more than a couple racist oopsies that occur over time. You know, just a couple. And it's no doubt that some white artists fail to recognize what a caricature even is. Like, it's okay to admit that you're not able to decipher what is racist and what isn't, because you're white. You're not the butt end of the joke. Here's a golden example. Crypto Art, a white artist, claimed that another artist, or CD Art, was drawing racist caricatures in her video titled "The Worst Tumblr Artist Ever."
Ghostbusters. Now, I want you guys to look at this image. Look at it really hard. Squint your fucking eyes till they bleed looking at this image. And I want you, in your mind brain, to focus on what you think the issue here is. If you stated that you literally cannot tell if this image was made with racist motivations towards Leslie Jones, then you are absolutely right. The press surrounding this movie was also just McFrickin' terrible. It got to the point where people were saying the worst things imaginable to her and about her. So the fact that she is drawn in this way and is the only character in this image shown to have fucking lip, it feels purposeful and in a not so great way. It feels like it was done in malice.
Now, this is
And now the VHS filter is back, apparently. Why do you keep turning it on and off? I don't get it.
a great example of a white artist claiming to know what is and what isn't racist when the majority of the black folks who saw artwork saw little to no issues with it.
But does that make it not racist? No, that fact alone doesn't make it not racist. I'll fully agree that Shannon does a poor job explaining why it is racist to begin with, but just because a bunch of black people who saw it weren't offended, that doesn't make it not racist. Let's take the trans community, for example. There's a lot of trans folks out there that agree with Blair White, despite the fact she's gone on record saying some hella transphobic shit, and even gone as far as to lie about trans folk to push a narrative. Now, is the fact a lot of trans folks like her make her not transphobic? No, of course not. The argument shouldn't be who said what or who agreed with what, it should be, is this correct, why or why not?
Okay, but like, if you let her finish, she goes on to say the opposite of, if people didn't agree that it was, then it isn't. And more of, yeah, no, here's some base test elaboration as to how it isn't.
Take my favorite YouTuber of all time, for example, Mute-chan, who is a fellow black artist. In her video titled "My Issue with Creepshow Art" from a subscriber, Mute responds with,
The Mute-chan person she shows goes on to basically show how it's not racist.
True, but Neko wasn't responding to that part. She was responding to a different part, that being the part where Omnia says that most black people who saw it didn't consider the image to be racist, with Neko essentially saying that that claim in a vacuum doesn't actually matter. Oh, and Neko actually does include this part in her video and argues against it by saying that she does like the fact that this person explained why the image in question wasn't racist as opposed to just saying they don't find it racist and moving on.
Omnia proceeds to play a clip from another person's video where they actually explain why they don't find the art piece offensive. I think the way this person actually explained why they didn't see it as offensive should be the way we go with these discussions. The identity of the person should be second to their actual explanation. Again, if someone tried using their experience to explain why an art piece was or wasn't offensive, that would be fine. But just saying I'm X race and I don't find this offensive isn't a compelling argument.
By saying that if it was, then where the hell is the negative portrayal of Patty from Ghostbusters?
What? What? Like, I'm trying to not make this entire commentary just a combination of me going, what, for about 20 minutes, but that's really the only thing I can do at this point. So it can't be racist because the portrayal might not be seen as negative? You know what? Since we're talking about black people, let's take a minute and see how this can be applied. Now, is eating watermelons or eating fried chicken a negative trait? Obviously not. So therefore, is art that portrays black people eating watermelons or eating fried chicken not racist, despite those being well-known racist stereotypes against black people? This point is especially confusing because a lot of what we consider to be the most common forms of racist stereotypes were actually never meant to be negative. I mentioned watermelons a couple of seconds ago. Well, that stereotype actually began because after the Civil War, black people grew watermelons as a sign of their freedom. Hell, look at minstrel shows for another example. As Thaddeus Russell documented in his book A Renegade History of the United States, minstrel shows actually weren't meant to be negative at first. In fact, they began as a celebration of black people and their lives, albeit it was primarily made by white people who had a very simplistic and very idealistic view of what it was actually like to be a slave. But that's a very different topic that I'm not getting into right now. Actually watching the original Creepshow Arts video, which I would not recommend because, God, it's terrible, shows the issue is not just how Leslie Jones was drawn, specifically how she was drawn with really exaggerated lips, which is a common stereotype about black people, but also the fact that she was drawn radically differently from all the other characters in this image. This, combined with the fact that Leslie Jones was harassed after Ghostbusters 2016 was released, could easily lead someone to believe this piece of art had racist intentions, which was Creepshow Arts' entire point.
I want you, in your mind brain, to focus on what you think the issue here is. If you stated that you literally cannot tell if this image was made with racist motivations towards Leslie Jones, then you are absolutely right. You see, during this time frame when this image was created, Leslie was receiving a lot of hate.
I just wanted to point out, for those who don't remember, the harassment Leslie Jones got was so bad that Twitter had to step in and ban multiple people as a result, something Twitter barely did at the time, most notably Milo Yiannopoulos.
Not only because the movie that this is based off of is genuinely outrageously bad, but because the press surrounding this movie was also just McFrickin' terrible. It got to the point where people were saying the worst things imaginable to her and about her. So the fact that she is drawn in this way and is the only character in this image shown to have fucking lip, it feels purposeful and in a not so great way. It feels like it was done in malice. Like, if I were to stumble across this image during that time frame, I would say, wow, this person sure fucking hates Leslie Jones and is trying to hurt her feelings.
With that said, I could at the very least understand if this was a point that Creepshow Arts made in a vacuum, but it wasn't. Actually, looking at her original video, you can find that she identifies multiple examples of racist caricatures in this person's art, such as here, for example.
Because at one point, they also posted this, which is not the worst thing they've done, but it is something else. Now let's first ignore Captain America in a push-up bra with a unibrow making the ugliest face I have ever seen, and focus instead on the drawing of what is supposed to be Anthony Mackie, who, in real life, is just so flippin' hot, he could destroy me. He could punch me in the face, and I would say, you know what, cool, that's fine. He's that caliber. She took a man who looks like this in real life, and turned him into this, a cross-eyed black man that looks like it was drawn by Dr. Seuss back when Dr. Seuss made racist Nazi cartoons, which was a thing. Look it up if you don't believe me. There is nothing about this drawing, about this rendering of this man that even looks kind of correct. And there is nothing about this that makes me say, wow, she must love this character so much to draw him like this. Again, Anthony Mackie is charming and handsome and amazing. And when he isn't acting, he builds houses and puts stained glass pieces in them. He's amazing and cool, and again, could punch me in the face, call me up anytime. And she made him look like this. The big lips, the cross eyes, the nose. Like this, it's not good or cool or okay. And we know it's not, because you're looking at it and I feel like you flinched.
And this, for that matter, which was shown slightly later.
But hey, you know what? At least they didn't draw Nicki Minaj as a racist caricature and ship her with Taylor Swift and draw fan art of it, right? At least they didn't do that really gross, highly specific thing that I just talked about. You know what? So that's really good. Oh wait, what? Oh, they did? Damn, well, okay. But at least they didn't draw Childish Gambino, aka Donald Glover, like that, right? They didn't do that? Oh, they did that too? Okay, goddamn.
And there's also this piece of art.
Yeah, the worst thing they did out of all of that is draw Finn from Star Wars like this. Now, if you have the time and the patience, feel free to write an essay in the comments down below why this image, this one right here on screen in front of you now, why this is wrong. Because I could write a 3-page thesis on it, and damn well already did. This right here, combined with this, and this, and this, that's a blatantly racist art style, my dude. Like, this isn't an art style. It's just fucked up.
Creepshow Arts' issue with this artist was not just that she couldn't tell if one picture of Leslie Jones was racist, it was that this artist had a history of drawing minorities, specifically in this case black people, with racial caricatures that, to be blunt, make them look uglier. That's what it comes down to. It doesn't matter if the caricatures are inherently negative or not. What matters is that they're always drawn with these stereotypical features. That is the issue, and you dancing around that doesn't change anything.
Talks about how exaggerated art styles aren't always racist. And
first off, Creepshow Arts actually responded to the idea that it was just an art style in her original video.
Oh, and by the way, just so anyone who's watching is just like, oh, this is just their art style, they can't do anything else. This right here is what they're capable of when they aren't making racist-ass caricatures and cartoons. This is the skill level they are actually at. I just wanted to let you guys know that in case you thought that this absolute garbage was the best they could do. This was all they're able to do. Their hands just can't draw anything else. It's not like it's me, where I'm pretty much unable to do better because I suck all kinds of ass. They actually choose to make this shit and be bad at it.
But you are right. Exaggerated art styles are not inherently racist. However, the actual issue Creepshow Arts had with these specific drawings was that the exaggerations not only seemed to go one way, like, seriously, the black characters were commonly way more exaggerated, to use Pepper-Tei's term, than the white characters, but also that all examples of exaggeration involved using pre-existing racial caricatures. Oh, and lastly, Mute-chan actually didn't argue that the art was exaggerated. In fact, she argued it was realistic, albeit stylized.
Even if you scroll down in the comments of the Tumblr artist video, you'll see top comments that feel the same way I do. Now, one of these comments, only from a few weeks ago, sums up my thoughts perfectly. Hey, I said this somewhere else, but I thought I'd post this for you to see. I'm a black woman, and I don't think the Leslie Jones, Anthony Mackie, Donald Glover, or even the Nicki Minaj/Taylor drawings were that bad. I actually like the Ghostbusters one. This video is slightly uncomfortable because your reasoning keeps going to the large lips and wide noses of African/African American people, but, like, those are part of our features. And I think our lips and noses are cute/beautiful, and can be emphasized in stylized drawings. I'm not a huge fan of Rory's art, Rory being the artist's name, by any stretch, but I don't think every one of their drawings is offensive. The Captain America and Finn drawings are jarring, I agree, but their other stuff didn't bother me that much. Your heart is in the right place, but I think it'd be helpful if you ask these groups of people who are the subject matter of these artworks what their views are, and what they think factors into an art piece being an offensive caricature versus a stylized representation.
It should be noted the word exaggeration is used in Mute-chan's comment, albeit in a part I cut out for the sake of time, but the point first and foremost is always that these are features that black people actually have. Not that this is just merely the art style the artist is going for. I should also note the claim that an exaggerated art style of realistic features is some kind of get-out-of-racism free card, which is what Mute-chan said and what Pepper-Tei was probably trying to say but couldn't articulate very well, is utterly nonsensical when you actually look at the history of art that has been declared racist. Take this character, who, for those who don't know, is from the Looney Tunes cartoon All That and Rabbit Stew, one of the censored 11. Is this just an example of an exaggerated art style? Hell, a good chunk of racial slurs are hyperbolic exaggerations of actual features African Americans have. Tar Baby, for example, was originally a name for a specific character in certain stories African Americans would tell, but then eventually became a racist term for African Americans on the basis of, well, they have dark skin and tar is black. Does that suddenly make the term tar baby not racist and actually just an exaggeration and the end result of a hyperbolic linguistic style? The answer's obviously no.
Now, I have a question, Coda. If Omnia genuinely believes that if somebody doesn't agree that a certain person is racist, why would Omnia do this then?
I have no idea what that's even supposed to mean.
Take my favorite YouTuber of
And now it's gone again. Look, if you're going to have a distracting visual effect, at least have the decency to have it throughout the entire video.
all time, for example, Mia Chan, who is a fellow black artist. In her video titled My Issue with Creepshow Art from a subscriber, Mute responds with,
Omnia proceeds to play a clip from another person's video where they actually explain why they don't find the art piece offensive. I think the way this person actually explained why they didn't see it as offensive should be the way we go with these discussions. The identity of the person should be second to their actual explanation. Again, if someone tried using their experience to explain why an art piece was or wasn't offensive, that would be fine. But just saying I'm X race and I don't find this offensive isn't a compelling argument.
So you did know about this, but still keep your last interjection regardless.
Maybe this has something to do with the fact that back then, Neko was responding to a different point made in this video.
why are we allowing white artists to claim to know what is and what isn't racist, while black artists get significantly less exposure and less of a voice?
Okay, let's take this point.
And now it's back again. You began this clip without it, and then you felt the need to put it back in the middle of the clip. Oh, and for those who think I'm focusing too much on this, I'm just going to say I'll stop pointing it out when it stops being distracting.
Point. Why are we allowing white people to say what is and isn't racist? Because while white people may not be able to fully experience the life of a black person, they can try their best to listen and understand and try to use that knowledge to speak up for black folk, especially when you're a white woman with a large audience like Shannon. Like, I'm white, but I can still explain why saying the N-word is racist. And personally speaking, I love seeing large cisgender creators like Vosh call out transphobia. He can't fully know the experiences of a trans person, however, he can use the knowledge he has to try and use his platform to call out transphobia and try to educate other cis folk who may not be willing to listen to trans folk because of transphobia.
Okay, you're really not letting her speak, because after that sentence she goes on to say that people of color themselves can't be listened to more than someone else that's white.
Really? Are you going to show Omnia saying this by any chance? I mean, you've shown clips of other videos in this chain before for the sake of context. Surely it would help your case if you showed us this. Oh, by the way, they don't? Just so you all know. And even then, this still isn't a good point because the point Omnia is making is based around this one example, which, as Neko just explained, wasn't a good example.
2. While
And now it's gone again. What is it with you and not being able to decide if you want to keep this damn VHS filter on throughout your video? This is really annoying.
Like, if you're gonna trust and listen to black people based on their race, are you then gonna listen to black anti-black racists?
Do you agree with me that there's no such thing as racism, sexism, homophobism, Islamophobism, deadbeat dadism, or white supremacism? Do you agree with me that those things don't exist? It just has everything to do with the lack of character?
I mean, it can have to do with lack of character and both exist at the same time.
Do you agree with me that those things
No, of
do
course,
not
those
exist?
things absolutely exist in the world.
You believe racism exists?
Are their perspective of what is and isn't racist just as valid as a white person who's anti-racist?
That's actually a pretty nice question to such a topic. Like, it is something I don't hear about a lot. But here's my take. If there are people like this dude you showed,
You know he has a name, right? It's Jesse Lee Peterson.
who don't believe racism is a thing, I'm going to let you know on this that those kinds of people, especially if they're a person of color, always get shunned out for a good reason.
Not really. Going back to Jesse Lee Peterson, he has a nationally syndicated radio show and is good friends with both Dennis Prager and Larry Elders. Dennis Prager is, of course, the man behind the PragerU YouTube channel, and Larry Elders was the Republican nomination for California governor last year.
They're racist, regardless if they're a person of color, Like, I remember you mentioned Blair White, somebody who is openly transphobic and has very transphobic beliefs, but there's a reason why she gets ignored by a bunch of other trans people.
While having nearly 1 million YouTube subscribers. And that's all I wanted to cover. I don't really have any final thoughts this time, considering, well, I said basically everything I needed to say during the commentary itself, but I am going to say this. I had to watch a Creepshow Arts video for research, and let me just say, as somebody who's never watched any of her videos before now, I do not get why anyone ever found her videos entertaining. Seriously, what is it with mediocre art commentators and having the motto of never use one word when 50 will do?